Hi INFJs and Autistic INFJs. Today we're having a chat about masking, the INFJ masking dilemma. Now this does apply to INFJs who are on the spectrum and who are not on the spectrum. You don't have to be on the spectrum to mask. Many INFJs who are not autistic mask. So I thought this would be a great topic to talk about. We're going to discuss what it is exactly, because I know for me, I had no idea what masking was. I seen the term lots and I didn't know what it was. Of course, for me, I was thinking, well, I don't wear a mask anywhere. I was thinking people were wearing masks. Welcome to my weird brain. And then we're going to talk about the impacts it has on our mental health, which is very interesting, and the long-term effects on it. Plus, I'm going to give you something thought-provoking to think about. Well, at least I hope that it gets you thinking. So, if this is something that interests you, stick around. I think it's going to be a great conversation. Welcome to my channel. If you're new, I am so glad you found it, and I really hope that you find it helpful. My name's Trina Bretnell. I'm an INFJ, and I am autistic, obviously high functioning. I like to show up here and share things that I have found that made my life easier, more successful, and just happier all around. And hope that people like me, INFJs or autistic INFJs, can feel seen, heard, understood, and less alone. Because that would have made a huge difference for me years and years ago. That's for sure. So welcome to my channel. If you're returning, I'm very glad that you came back. I'm very grateful for all my viewers. Before we get going, I do want to ask you guys, if you have a topic that you want me to talk about, please put it in the comments, or I put my email address down below in the description of this video. I think it's below. Feel free to email me if you don't like to comment, because I know some of us don't, and that's okay. I was there too. I never used to like commenting. Email me directly. I love hearing from my viewers, so the more comments I get or the more emails I get, it really bumps up my vibration to that higher level, and I love it. I'm just so grateful for you guys, because this is just amazing. All right, let's get into this. Masking. What is masking? I have an itchy nose here. I have too many dogs and a dog hair on my nose. So let me ask you first. And if you want to put it in the comments, go ahead and put it in the comments. Do you mask? Do you even know if you mask? If you want to put it in the comments. I didn't know that it was a thing. Like I said, I didn't understand what it was. So masking is a strategy that many INFJs and autistic INFJs use when we want to fit in to the neurotypical society. We learn to use it at a very young age. Now, when I say this, I don't mean absolutely every INFJ masks. Just because you're an INFJ, it does not mean you mask. In fact, a friend of mine who is an INFJ, I would have to say that he probably doesn't do it at all. He had parents that celebrated who he was, encouraged him to be himself, and taught him that it really didn't matter what other people's thoughts about him were. So chances are pretty slim that he had to mask at all, and he's very confident. So I really enjoy talking to him because we come from opposite ends of the spectrum. I shouldn't have used the word spectrum, not the autistic spectrum, but just opposite ends of the INFJ spectrum. I'm going to use spectrum because we're very different in there. I struggled with no confidence at all, and he's got lots. And so anyway, I'm not saying that every INFJ does mask, but many of us do mask a lot. So masking is a change in our behavior, speech. We'll start talking different depending on who we're around, mannerism, anything to conform to society's standards, right? Most of us have that nagging fear of being rejected. We just want to fit in. So we do it. And we do this from a really young age. And lots of times we don't even realize we're doing it. We carry it into our adult life and we continue. And that happened to me. I learned at a very young age. I don't know. It was probably when I first started school, but it might have even been before that, to mask. I felt very wrong to be me. What just came natural to me, I felt was very wrong with people's reactions around me, or what people would say to me. So I would get that same feeling. I can remember thinking about that. When I unpacked this, I thought about it, and I remember being very young, and I would get that same fear that I would get if I knew that I had done something wrong. So like, say say a child steals like a little candy from a store, not even realizing they stole it, and then all of a sudden they realize, oh, I stole this. And you know that fear you get that, oh, this was wrong. Or maybe we broke curfew and we have that fear like, oh, now we're going to be in trouble, right? That was the same fear that I got, that same dread, that same feeling when I would act myself and I would get those looks or those comments from people. So I didn't like it. I'm highly empathetic. I'm very sensitive. I didn't like that feeling at all. So I started masking. I would act, I would talk like whoever I was around. Never me. Never me. I would have the same interests. I remember, well, you know what? This even goes into my adult life. It depended on who I was around. I'd be interested in whatever they're interested in, even if I didn't like it. Like I didn't even clue in then that, well, I don't even like this. Why am I interested in it? But I did it because everybody else that I was hanging around was interested in it, right? I masked so much in my personal life, in my work life, that I lost who I was. I didn't even know who I was. And this is very common. We lose our sense of self and we get into an identity crisis. Now, I don't know if I would say that I was into an identity crisis. I think that I masked so much that I was way beyond the identity crisis. I had no idea who I was. I had no identity. I didn't even know that was a thing. What really triggered me to realize that I was masking was I was doing a workshop with somebody. I don't even remember what the workshop was about completely, but we got asked what we love to do. What is it that we love to do? Not what we think everybody else thinks that we should love to do. What is it that we love to do? Not our significant other, not our children, not our friends, not our parents. What is it that you like to do? Well, I couldn't answer that. I had no clue what I like to do. I didn't know who I was. And that got me thinking like, oh my gosh, I don't even know who I am. It took me a good 4 years to discover who I was, to find myself again. Once I realized that I was masking and I just wasn't me. It took me 4 years, a good 4 years. Of course, that was bouncing back and forth from masking and not masking and masking to not masking. It's a very scary thing to pull that mask off and really allow yourself to be seen. Masking impacts our mental health. Now, INFJs and autistic INFJs, we have the same, I dropped my little spinner thing. It shows in our mental health the same way. However, if we're autistic, it's going to be amplified, okay? So when I talk about how it's going to impact our mental health, it applies to both INFJs and autistic INFJs. However, if you're autistic, it's going to be amplified, okay? So masking leads to sensory overload. And now there's a bug bugging me. Sensory overload. It makes us way more sensitive to the things around us, leading to anxiety and overwhelm. Again, remember, if you're autistic, you're going to feel this even worse. It leads to social anxiety, burnout, depression, bad relationships, one bad relationship after another, or constantly struggling in your relationships. Maybe they're not bad, but you're constantly struggling in them, okay? Now, the long terms of masking, there's long-term effect. It's identity confusion. Remember I said that identity crisis that we'll get into, a weakened sense of self. Like I said, I was beyond that. But there's also chronic mental health issues that come along with masking all the time. And that is like something like generalized anxiety disorder, major depressive disorder. Depressive disorder? Yeah, that's the word I'm looking for. PTSD will actually show up because of the constant stress and trauma of trying to suppress one's true self. That is very stressful and it's exhausting. When you pull your mask off and just start being you and let the chips fall where they may, I realized how exhausting it was to not be me. It is so much easier to just be me and let it go. Physical health, it impacts our physical health. It'll manifest such as headaches, chronic fatigue, stomach issues, immune function issues, just to name a few. But the real critical one the long-term effect that I think is the most important. I mean, all of these are important for sure, don't get me wrong. But the one that really I struggled with was the disconnection from myself. This was huge because when we are disconnected from ourself, it hacks on our self-worth, our self-belief, our self-confidence, our self-image. We start to believe we are worthless. We start to believe that we cannot do any of this because we have no idea who we are. When we have no self-worth or self-love, everything is difficult because we don't think we are good enough. We don't think we are worthy enough of doing it. When we don't have that belief in ourselves, we don't have the energy or the motivation or the momentum to show up and actually do what it is that we want to do. And I'm not saying that once we get self-belief and self-worth, everything just starts falling into our lap, everything becomes easy, because it doesn't. It isn't easy. It's always work. However, when we don't have that self-worth and that self-love and that confidence, that work is twice as hard. Think of it as like the mountain, but when we don't have any of that, it's even a bigger mountain. It's like Mount Everest climbing it, okay? This is huge because it impacts so many aspects of our life. That self-worth, it's critical. That's why I think this is the most crucial. And building self-worth when you have zero, take it from me, I know from experience, is very difficult. I'm not saying it's difficult because I don't want you to do it. I totally want you to do it. It is hard, and it takes a long time before you start seeing results. It doesn't happen overnight, especially when it's caused from masking, because chances are we masked from a very young age. So we burned that pathway in our brain believing that we were worthless, that we had nothing to give, we had nothing to offer. I mean, I'm just naming off the things how I felt, right? That I was useless, that anything like, I was horrible to myself. I don't even want to get into it. I was horrible. Anyway, I burned that into my brain, that pathway, believing it since I was really young. That was a very deep ingrained pathway that I developed in my brain. It doesn't happen overnight to change that. Think of how many years it took to get there. It takes a little bit of work, well, a whole lot of work, to reroute that pathway. This is why I think that the disconnection from self, from masking, is probably one of the most critical, because when we do not have that self-worth and our self-love, we are going to have depression. We're going to have stomach issues. We're going to have headaches. We're going to have the mental health, the PTSD. We're going to have the anxiety. We're going to have that weakened sense of self, right? To me, in my opinion, that self-worth, that self-love is the base point to all of it. So when we pull off our mask, it's scary. It's hard at first, but it's not near as hard as working through everything else that it created. So I masked my entire life until I was probably late 30s, early 40s. It didn't help me, right? I wanted to be accepted. I wanted to fit in. I wanted to be successful. I wasn't any of that. When I pulled off my mask, yes, there are people that probably don't like me, and I don't really care anymore. Let the chips fall where they may. Not everybody, I'm not everybody's cup of tea, but you know what? Everybody isn't my cup of tea, and that's okay. However, things started rolling more my way. I started living my life the way I wanted to live, and things became easier. So here's my question for you. Is masking worth it? So it creates all of that just because we're scared of being rejected because we want to fit in. And that's scary. I get it. However, it didn't serve me, and it probably isn't serving people that are doing it now, because it's creating more chaos. It's creating things that are harder. So pulling it off, yep, we're going to encounter those people that don't like us, that may reject us. But you know what? They're not our people anyway. We don't need them. So I ask, is it worth it? Right? I struggled in my career. I never got those promotions that I tried so hard to get because I was trying so hard to be somebody I wasn't. Once I pulled the mask off, opportunities just started rolling my way that were a fit for me, and it became easier. So was masking worth it my entire life? I would have to say no. I'd like to hear your thoughts on it. I like to hear different perspectives and thoughts on it. Maybe you have a different angle of coming from masking. I would like to hear about it. Drop it in the comments or email me. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for sticking with me. I hope this was helpful. I hope it gave you something to think about. I have very strong feelings about masking. If you found this helpful, please like my video. And if you haven't yet, I invite you to subscribe to my channel. And again, thank you so much for joining. Remember, you are enough just the way you are. And I hope to see you again real soon with another fun video. Until then, bye for now.